Surface collection here at Notian has a number of important goals. Perhaps the most important and useful is to get a sense of the chronological range of occupation at the site. So finding material and looking at the date range between the earliest material from the latest, and then when the densest concentration of material is, which would correlate to the period of highest activity, the kind of heyday of the city. We started in a more traditional way, where we used the 30 by 30 meter grid squares that had been laid out for the geophysical survey. And we divided those up into 10 by 10 meter squares, and we had people walking separated 2 meters apart who would collect pottery in those 10 by 10 meter units. But those areas had great diversity of surface legibility, of visibility of the materials, of the soil from which the ancient pottery and other materials can be retrieved. So even if you look across here, you'll notice that there are some areas of dense grass and thistle and bushes, and there's no way that the pottery underneath that vegetation is going to be visible to us because it's trapped under the roots and we can't see it. But you'll notice the areas where the sheep have walked and areas where people have walked and areas of high slope are very visible. There's no surface vegetation, so the soil is exposed, and because the soil is exposed, when it rains, the soil erodes away and the pottery is revealed. And so we decided to target those areas of high visibility.
Mainly what we collect on the surface is pottery, and the pottery is our principal evidence for the date of the site, for the establishment of the community on this location, and for the duration of at least intensive occupation of the site.
The fantastic thing about Notian is that there is so much material right here on the surface. So even though we're not excavating yet, we actually have access to a really nice assemblage of material that can be dated. Nice tableware, so the kind of things you would eat with, that comes from the Eastern Mediterranean, so from the kind of area around Cilicia and Antioch in Syria, that area. And from North Africa and from Italy. These are more specialized wares, so they would have been imported here from those longer distances. But then most of the stuff is regionally produced, and some of it, the very plain jugs and kind of jars and plates, may even be produced even more locally.
When we first started pottery collection in 2015, it became apparent, not initially to me, but to our pottery experts when they looked at the material, that the period of intensive occupation of the site is much more limited than we had originally expected, extending only essentially from let's say about 200 BC to about 100 AD.
That did change our understanding, right? We kind of had to bring forward the latest major time period of occupation by a few centuries.
The thing that's interesting about the Notian survey from my point of view is that they're surveying a settlement site. Almost all surveys that we know of that take place survey the countryside. They survey to find sites. We know there's a site here. This is the site. No more surprises are in store that way. And yet it turns out that a careful grid by grid survey, especially with the attention to detail that this crew provides, shows us differences in the patterning. Now, we don't really know if those differences are meaningful. We won't know, nobody will know, until there's excavation. But once and if that excavation takes place, this survey information, these things that were collected on the surface of any given area, are going to become gold.
And that's one of the distinguishing features of Notian, is that because of the terrain and because of the current use of the site, where it's not occupied by houses, but it is used for herding and for collecting herbs, we do have these great kind of pockets or windows into the ancient activity and the ancient remains of the site.